Good morning. How are you? It's going to be a hot one today. It's Friday. It's 11 o'clock and welcome to Primetime EV. It's a big one this week because the government's about to tear up its own electric car grants. The ZEV mandate UK 2026. Well, the ZEV mandate, that's the rule that decides how many electric cars manufacturers have to sell every year, is getting watered down hard. We'll get into the actual numbers in a minute, but the short version is the 80% target for 2030 might be cut all the way down to 50. And apparently it's the Prime Minister himself pushing for it. Then we're heading to Spain, sort of, for Skoda's new Epiq, which is built there, and it's just landed in the UK at a price that genuinely changes the conversation. It's the same price as the petrol car to the pound, no EV premium, and that's a big moment. For the first time in this segment, we'll show you exactly what £24,950 gets you, and it's more than you think. And in the middle of the show today, I'm going to try something new. We're going to kick off a new series of which I'm calling EV Charging Bootcamp, which is based on some of the shorts channels that I did previously. It's going to be sessions over 5 weeks, one big question each week, building up to one proper long-form guide at the end. Today, we're starting right at the foundations, which is AC versus DC and why your house and your battery don't actually speak the same language. Spoiler, it's also why some houses can charge faster than others, and it's nothing to do with the charger you buy. Plus, what happens when one of the UK's mid-sized charging networks buys part of another one, and a report putting an actual price tag on what we all stand to lose if charging investment does slow down. And today's Q&A is a big one. We've got lots of questions that have been coming through, and we're giving it proper time rather than rushing through them. So that's EV News, June 2026 on Primetime EV. Let's get lots to get through, and let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to share this screen here, and it's a big story on the ZEV mandate target being cut. Let me just make myself smaller there so you can see it properly. Okay, is the UK scrapping its electric car sales targets? Not scrapping, but significantly weakening them. The government is reviewing the ZEV mandate, which currently requires 80% of new cars to be fully electric by 2030. Reports suggest that figures could be cut to 50%, with hybrids picking up the difference. That's the ZEV Mandate Review 2030. Here's the direct answer. The Prime Minister is stepping in personally on this one. Keir Starmer is reportedly overruling his own Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, to relax the mandate after sustained pressure from car makers and from the Unite Union. So how does the mandate actually work right now? Every manufacturer has to hit a yearly target for zero emission sales. This year it's 33%. Miss it and the fine is £15,000 per car, not per percentage point. SMMT EV sales 2026. The trouble is the market isn't quite keeping up. SMMT, that's the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, reckons battery electric share will land around 26.8% this year, below the official target. Manufacturers say they've spent over £10 billion on discounts just to get close. Important detail here, though. The official 33% target isn't really the real target because it's not the real target because of something called flexibilities. Manufacturers can bank credits, borrow from future years, trade credits between each other. Once you account for all of that, the actual effective target for this year works out closer to 24.5%, which means on the numbers we're already seeing the industry is broadly on pace anyway. That's the case for relaxing it. Mike Hawes at the SMMT put it plainly. The assumptions behind the mandate no longer hold. Higher energy costs, slower demand, a tougher economy than anyone designed for back in 2020. The SMMT Electrified Conference 2026. This isn't a new complaint either. At the SMMT Electrified Conference earlier this year, manufacturer after manufacturer made the same point. Stellantis UK's group managing director put it bluntly. If you're forced to sell cars at a loss just to hit a quota that calls the whole investment case for building here into question. His words were that the UK needs a review now, not next year, to help car makers might make the right decisions on where they put their money. So that's the Electric Car Grant UK 2026. You can see those discounts everywhere right now if you go shopping. The government's own electric car grant offers up to £3,750 off, but manufacturers are stacking their own money on top of that to hit their mandate numbers. Ford Puma's Gen E got the full grant amount and Ford added a free home charger, 5 years of free servicing, and thousands of miles of free charging on top. Vauxhall's doing similar across its entire electric range. None of that generosity is really about customer goodwill. It's about each manufacturer needing to shift enough electric volume to avoid a £15,000 fine per car at the end of the year. That's actually the heart of the manufacturer's complaint. They're not against electric cars. They're against being forced to discount this aggressively just to hit an arbitrary yearly number, when the discount itself isn't sustainable forever. The EV Mandate Consultation UK. Now, on the other side, Charge UK, the trade body for charging networks, says weakening the mandate sends exactly the wrong signal at exactly the wrong time. Their chief exec called it something that could slam the brakes on the entire infrastructure rollout. And that's the bit that actually matters to you watching this. The mandate isn't really about car sales targets in isolation. It's the signal that tells charging companies it's safe to invest billions in new chargers. Soften the signal and you risk softening the investment. What's not changing, and this is important, the 2030 ban on new petrol and diesel cars stays. That part's untouched. What's changing is how much of that remaining gap gets filled by full electric versus hybrid. Hybrid Sales UK 2026. And that's actually the biggest shift hiding inside this story. Right now, hybrids only count for a little under the full mandate. If the rules change, plug-in hybrids could end up making a much larger slice of what counts as compliant, without manufacturers needing to sell anywhere near as many full electric cars to hit their numbers. A consultation is coming, not an instant change. That could take months, and it needs the devolved governments on board too. Scotland and Wales both run their own EV infrastructure strategies alongside the UK-wide mandate. And any change here needs to sign off from all three administrations, not just Westminster. That's not a rubber stamp process either. Scotland in particular has its own more ambitious targets around shifting away from car dependency altogether. So there's a real chance the devolved nations push back on any softening that looks too generous to manufacturers. So nothing's locked in yet. Figures from 50 to 70% are still being discussed for that 2030 number. Unite Union EV Jobs. Worth understanding why Unite, a union, not a car company, is pushing for this too. They've warned the current pace of the mandate is significantly contributing to job losses in UK manufacturing, because plants here are still ramping up EV production lines while demand hasn't caught up at the same speed. There's also a House of Commons committee angle worth knowing. MPs on the Business and Trade Committee called the current mandate an existential risk to the UK car industry and pushed the government to bring the review forward rather than wait until the original 2027 date. That's actually already happened, by the way. The industry minister confirmed a few months back that the review starts this year, not 2027 as originally planned. So in a sense, this week's story is the consultation actually beginning, not just being threatened. Worth saying clearly what this isn't. This isn't the UK abandoning electric cars, and it isn't a return to combustion engines as a long-term bet. Every other major target stays exactly where it was. What's genuinely up for debate is the shape of the path to get there, how much of the heavy lifting electric cars do alone versus sharing it with hybrids for a few more years than originally planned. My verdict on this is that the review was probably overdue. 5-year-old assumptions about energy prices and demand were always going to need revisiting. And frankly, the industry has been asking for this since at least last year's Electrified conference. But there's a real risk buried in here. If the infrastructure industry pulls back investment because the targets wobble, the people who lose out aren't car company shareholders. They're the people who don't have a driveway and were relying on public charging, actually turning up on schedule. We'll come back to that in a few minutes because there's a report out this week putting an actual number on what's at stake. Okay, we're going to go on to the Skoda Epiq. Actually, I've got some graphics on it, but I may as well run a bit of vid while we're talking about it as well. So let me just run that. There you can just see the vehicle. How much does the Skoda Epiq cost in the UK? The Skoda Epiq starts at £24,950 on the road, exactly the matching price of its petrol sibling, the Kamiq. Orders open in July 2026 with deliveries following shortly after. Skoda Epiq UK price 2026. Here's the bit that actually matters. For years, going electric has meant paying a premium over the equivalent electric petrol car. The Epiq just quietly removed that. Same badge, same size class, same price as the Kamiq. no asterisk, no from price that only applies to the stripped out base trim nobody actually buys. 2 batteries on offer. The smaller one, 37 kilowatt hours, gets you about 190 miles. The bigger one, 52 kilowatt hours, stretches to 272 miles. And that's the one most people will actually want. The Skoda Epiq range UK. Charging speed splits by battery too. The smaller pack tops out around 90 kilowatts. The bigger one hits 133 kilowatts, which gets you to 10 to 80% in about 23 minutes. Properly competitive for this class. One genuinely surprising spec for a £25,000 car, bi-directional charging comes as standard. That means with the right home setup, this car can feed power back into your house. That's a feature you'd normally expect only see on cars twice the price, and Skoda's putting it on their cheapest model. Built on Volkswagen's new MEB Plus platform, same underpinnings as the upcoming ID Polo and the Cupra Raval, first Skoda ever built in Spain, actually at the Pamplona plant, rather than the usual Czech factories. That plant's no stranger to volume either. It's built over 10 million vehicles since 1984, and it'll be running combustion and electric models down the very same production line. Affordable Electric Car UK 2026. Trims are simple. SEL, an edition at launch, plus a limited first edition with orange accents if you want to stand out a bit. 475-litre boot, which is genuinely generous for something this size, plus a 25-litre frunk up front for your cables. Worth knowing who it's up against: Renault 4, Citroën EC3, Ford Puma Gen E, Kia EV2. This is now a genuinely crowded part of the market, and that's a good thing for buyers. The Epiq's boot beats the Renault 4 by 55 litres, for what that's worth if you're the sort who cares about boot space, which honestly you probably are if you're shopping in this segment. Electric Car Grant UK 2026. It hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but it's widely expected to qualify for the government electrics car grant given where it sits on price. If it does, you're looking at further savings on top of an already sharp number. Worth knowing how that scheme actually works too. There are 2 bands, £1,500 or the full £3,750, and which one you get depends partly on the manufacturer's sustainability credentials, not just the car's price tag. Over 40 models already qualify for one band or the other, everything from the Renault 5 to the VW ID4. So this has genuinely reshaped pricing across the whole affordable end of the market in the space of about 1 year. EV lease deals UK 2026. And it's worth flagging the knock-on effect here too. When a manufacturer gets the full grant amount like Ford did with the Puma Gen E, that's reshaping monthly lease pricing as well, not just the cash price. We've seen sub £150 a month lease deals appear on cars that would have been comfortably over $200 a year a year ago. If the Epiq lands grant eligibility, expect similarly aggressive lease pricing to follow fairly quickly once dealers get their allocations. And here's the thing I keep coming back to with this car. Price parity changes the conversation in a showroom completely. Right. Skoda. Shopping. Right now, anyone cross shopping, it hasn't a fixture, but worth noting, scheme actually works too. There are 2 bands, £1,500 or the okay. We've seen sub £150 a month, and if the Epiq lands grant eligibility, expect similarly aggressive lease pricing to follow. Price parity changes the conversation showroom completely because this car is the same price as the petrol version. So it's the first EV that you've seen that actually will follow both. Against an Epiq isn't being asked to pay extra to go electric. They're just choosing which one suits them better. That's a fundamentally different sales conversation to the one this segment's had for the last 5 years. Where the EV always just needed a justification for the extra cost, this one doesn't need a justification. It's just the same price. Worth a practical note for anyone actually considering one. I'm just going to put this up, remove that and put the price up so you can see the details on it. The Skoda Dealer Network UK. Worth a practical note for anyone actually considering one. Skoda's UK dealer network is well established. Over 110 dealers across the country. So unlike some of the newer Chinese or smaller European entrants in this segment, servicing and warranty support shouldn't be a worry. That matters more than people think when buying something genuinely new to the market, because the car being good on paper doesn't help much if there's no dealer within 50 miles when something needs looking at. My verdict on this is that price parity with petrol is the moment this segment's been waiting for. It's not flashy, it's not exciting on paper, but exciting was never the point for this segment. The point was making electric the boring, obvious choice. The Epiq does that, and I suspect, well, we'll be looking back at this car as a bigger deal than the spec sheet suggests. Okay, I'm going to run a new segment this week on EV Charging Bootcamp, which is going to be just a kind of explainer about how EV charging works. So here we go, AC versus DC, and what that applies for. And I'm just going to break these down each week, as I know a lot of people are often asking questions about how EV charging works. What's the difference between AC and DC EV charging? AC charging relies on a converter inside your car to change the power before it reaches the battery, which limits the speed. DC charging skips that step and feeds the battery directly, which is why rapid chargers can be so much faster. Right, new series starting today, EV Charging Bootcamp. 5 weeks building up to one long guide at the end. Today, we're starting right at the beginning. AC versus DC. AC versus DC EV Charging UK. Every socket in your house delivers AC, alternating current, but your car's battery only accepts DC, direct current. So every single time you plug in at home, something in that chain has to do the converting. With AC charging, that conversion happens inside the car. There's a little box called the onboard charger doing the work. And here's the thing that catches people out. That box has a fixed limit. Doesn't matter how fast the charger outside claims to go, the car's onboard charger is often the real bottleneck. We have this with a lot of the 22 kilowatt AC chargers that are lying across London. They're everywhere, but most people can only charge at 11 kilowatts because their vehicle's onboard charger will only allow that. Home EV charging speed is the other thing to think about. Most home chargers sit at around 7 kilowatts, plenty for overnight. Public AC points can stretch to 22 kilowatts, but plenty of cars still can't take advantage of that because their onboard charger caps out lower. Single phase versus three-phase EV Charging UK. Here's something almost nobody explains properly, and it actually matters more than the car you buy. Whether you even get that 22 kilowatt speed at home depends on your house's electrical supply, not just your charger. About 95% of UK homes run on what's called single phase power, and that caps you at 7 kilowatts no matter how much you spend on a fancy wall box. Paying more for a premium charger on a single phase supply doesn't get you a single extra kilowatt. Only a 3-phase upgrade does that, and that's a proper electrical job, not a quick swap. A small number of homes, mostly larger or older properties, do have 3-phase supply already. Quick way to check. If your fuse box has 3 separate main switches instead of 1, you've likely got it. If you're not sure, your installer will check this during the survey before they fit anything. Worth checking. 3-phase power is generally used around for industrial purposes as well. So if you've got somewhere that has been converted, you may find that you've got 3-phase power there. DC Fast Charging UK 2026. DC is a totally different setup. The conversion happens in the charger itself before it even reaches the car. So it can bypass the onboard charger completely and feed the battery directly. That's why rapid chargers can push 50, 150, even 350 kilowatts. But, and this is the bit that people miss, the car decides how fast it'll accept that power. A 350 kilowatt charger doesn't mean much if your car is only rated to charge at 150. The charger's just offering. The car's the one deciding what it'll take. Just going to switch that up so you can see me a bit clearer while I'm talking to you. Rapid charging explained. Okay, so here's the practical version. Overnight at home, AC every time, no question. Out on a longer trip and you need to top up quickly, that's when DC Rapid earns its keep. Using a rapid charger every single day, though, isn't usually doing your battery any favors long term. One more thing that trips people up. Kilowatts and kilowatt hours sound the same. They're not. Kilowatts is speed, how fast power's flowing. Kilowatt hours is the size of the tank or battery, how much your battery can actually hold. We'll go deeper on that in a few weeks, but for today, you just know that 150 kilowatt charger describes the speed, not how much charge you'll end up with. EV Charging UK explained. And here's something that catches a lot of new owners out specifically. Your charging speed isn't constant even on DC. It's fastest near the start, then it tapers off as the battery fills up to protect the cells from getting too hot too fast. So that 10 to 80% in 20 minutes figure you see in car adverts is doing a lot of quiet work. The last 20%, 80 to 100, often takes nearly as long as the whole first 80 did. That's exactly why rapid charging stops are usually planned around getting to 80, not 100. Chasing that last bit isn't just isn't worth the time. Quick myth bust while we're here. People sometimes assume a 3-phase home supply means their car charges 3 times faster automatically. It doesn't. Your car's onboard charger still has to support it. Plenty of EVs are single phase only, regardless of what your house can deliver. So check your car's spec, not just your fuse box, before you pay for an upgrade that you might not even use. EV charger installation cost UK. It's worth a word on cost too, since people ask. A standard single phase 7 kilowatt home charger installation typically runs somewhere in the few hundred to low £1,000 range, depending on your consumer unit and cable run, often partly offset by manufacturer or energy company incentives. 3-phase upgrades are a different proposition entirely. That's the electricity network operator getting involved, not just an electrician, and it can run into thousands depending on what your street supply already looks like. For the vast majority of people doing normal daily routine mileage, 7 kilowatt single phase overnight is genuinely enough. So don't assume you need the upgrade just because it exists. My verdict on this is that understand that one distinction. Your car only speaks DC, your house only speaks AC, and almost everything else about charging speeds and chargers start making sense. The bit most people genuinely don't know is the single phase limit on home charging. So if you've ever wondered why your fast home charger still takes all night, that's usually your answer. Next week, we're going to do the connectors, Type 2, CCS, CCS2, and why one of them is basically extinct. So that's it on charging for this week. I'm going to go down to the number on the mandate. How much could the EV charging sector be worth to the UK economy? Analysis from Charge UK and LCP Delta suggests the charging sector could add £15.5 billion to the UK economy by 2035 and support over 300,000 jobs, but only if the ZEV mandate stays on track. Charge UK Economic Report 2026. Funny timing, this one. Days after the news that the mandate might get watered down, Charge UK and analysts LCP Delta put out a report saying the upside of keeping it intact is enormous. Worth saying, Charge UK obviously has skin in this game. They represent the charging companies, so take their numbers with the same pinch of salt you'd give the SMMT representing the manufacturers on the other side of this argument. But the underlying logic doesn't actually depend on who's saying it. £15.5 billion by 2035. 300,000 jobs across the wider EV sector. That's the number on the table if investment keeps flowing into charge points at the pace the current targets assume. Break that down a little, and it's not just charge point installers. It's electricians, civil engineering firms doing the groundworks, software companies running the back-end payment systems, and a long supply chain of cable and hardware manufacturers who only invest in UK capacity if they believe the demand is actually coming. UK charging infrastructure jobs. The logic is straightforward, even if the politics aren't. Charging companies plan years ahead. If they believe demand is locked in because the mandate guarantees a growing number of electric cars on the road, they build accordingly. More rapid hubs, more curbside points, more investment in places that don't have driveways. Soften that guarantee and the investment case gets shakier. Nobody builds a charging hub for cars that might not show up in the numbers everyone expected. That's not me being dramatic. That's literally how infrastructure finance works. These are projects with payback periods measured in years, financed against forecast demand, not hope. EV Charging Investment UK. This is exactly the tension we talked about earlier in the show with the mandate review. One side says that the targets are unrealistic and costing manufacturers billions in discounts. The other side says weakening them risks billions in infrastructure that never gets built. And right now, the UK only has just under 1 million public charge points, according to Charge UK's own figures. So this isn't a sector that's anywhere near job done yet. Worth saying plainly, this is the bit that actually affects ordinary EV drivers, not just car company balance sheets. Slower infrastructure rollout means longer queues, fewer rapid chargers, and the driveway gap getting wider, not narrower. 40% of UK households don't have off-street parking. They're the ones with most to lose if the investments slow down. because they don't have the home charging fee fallback the rest of us take for granted. UK net zero transport. There's a wider context too. Transport is the single biggest source of UK greenhouse gas emissions, over a quarter of their total, and cars and taxis make up more than half of that figure on their own. The ZEV mandate was always designed to be the main lever pulling that number down. Soften the lever and the whole net zero transport plan leans more heavily on a hybrid strategy that wasn't really the original plan. There's also a grid angle worth mentioning. More EVs means more electricity demand. A national grid system operator has already flagged the balancing challenge that comes with millions more cars charging at once. None of that's a reason to slow down. If anything, it's a reason to keep the investment signal strong. So the grid and the charging network scale up together rather than the charging side stalling while everyone waits to see what happens. UK EV infrastructure funding. There's already public money in motion here too, which is part of why this debate matters so much right now. Local authorities can apply for levy funding. That's the scheme supporting local charging infrastructure in England. And there's a separate rapid charging fund meant to boost provision at motorway services, though that one's been slower to actually get going than anyone hoped. Both of those funding streams were designed around the assumption that private investment would scale up alongside them. If the mandate softens and private investment pulls back, public funding alone almost certainly isn't enough to fill the gap on its own. There's no easy answer here, and I'm not going to pretend there is, but £15 billion and 300,000 jobs is a big number to risk on the assumption that hybrids can quietly fill the gap without anyone noticing the infrastructure side stalling. Worth keeping a close eye on what the consultation actually lands on over the next few months. There are some major charge point operators that have really innovated in the UK, and they've put in a fantastic infrastructure and are continuing to do so. Let's hope that sticks, because we've really got a long way compared to many countries, and I've been looking at it around Europe and so on, and we're way ahead. So let's hope that this continues. Okay, quick closer. Who owns the most EV chargers in the UK now? I'm just going to switch back to my other rolling slide of prices. I haven't updated this week, but I will be next week or the next time we do a show, so that you can see prices. But these prices were updated only the other day, so they're relatively recent. Remember that the Primetime EV Club updates pricing every month with you. Who owns the most EV chargers in the UK now? The charging network landscape keeps shifting through consolidation. BEV has just acquired MER's UK public charging arm, instantly jumping the network up the rankings and adding hundreds of AC charge points concentrated mostly in the south of England. UK EV Charging Network 2026. Quick one to close on. BEV, mostly known up north, has just bought MER's UK public charging business. MER ran a wide spread of slower AC chargers, a lot of them in the car parks across the south. That deal jumps BEV up into the mid-teens nationally by charge point count, almost overnight. They're already known for a decent off-peak rate, 39 pence a kilowatt hour overnight. So it'll be worth watching whether that pricing carries over to the newly acquired sites. Let's hope the south gets some of that as well then. EV charging network consolidation. This is the pattern across the whole sector right now, by the way. Ubitricity buying Sure Charge a few weeks back, now this. Over 100 operators in the UK, but the top 10 control more than half the charge points between them. And in the rapid and ultra rapid bracket specifically, the top 5 operators control nearly half on their own. Worth naming the bigger players while we're here. Instavolt and Tesla's supercharger network are roughly neck and neck at the top of the rapid charging table, with around 2,200 points each. Ionity, despite having car manufacturer backing behind it, sits well behind both at around 660. It's worth asking why consolidation keeps happening at all. Running a charging network well, keeping chargers actually working, handling customer support, negotiating electricity contracts at scale gets cheaper per charger the bigger you are. Smaller operators often get bought not because they've failed, but because someone bigger can run the same chargers more efficiently and more reliably. EV Charger Reliability UK. Reliability is actually the thing worth watching most closely after a deal like this. MER's network, like a lot of smaller AC operators, has had mixed reliability scores historically. Nothing disastrous, but the kind of occasional charges down experience that puts people off charging generally. If BEV brings their own maintenance standards to those sites, that's a genuine win for anyone using them. If the acquired sites just get left running on old infrastructure under a new logo, That's a missed opportunity. Worth checking back on this in a few months, just once the dust settles. Consolidation isn't necessarily bad news for drivers. Fewer, stronger networks can mean better reliability and more consistent pricing. But it's worth watching who ends up owning the chargers near you, because pricing strategy can change fast after a buyout. Okay, we've got a bunch of questions this week as well. Will the ZEV mandate change affect the price of EVs I can buy right now? Not immediately. The mandate review is a consultation process, not an overnight rule change. So manufacturers' pricing and discount strategies for 2026 models are already locked in regardless of what happens to the 2030 target. Longer term, if the targets soften, manufacturers may feel less pressure to discount EVs as heavily to hit the yearly quotas. So today's deep discounts might not stick around forever. Remember, manufacturers have spent over £10 billion on EV discounts in the last 2 years, specifically to hit mandate numbers. Take that pressure away and there's less reason to keep cutting prices that aggressively. If you're EV shopping now, this year's pricing is probably about as good as it gets for a while. I genuinely treat this as if you've been on the fence, this is your year's situation, because I don't think these discount levels survive a softened mandate into 2027 and beyond. Question 2, is the Skoda Epiq eligible for the government EV grant? It hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but several outlets expect the Epiq to qualify for the electric car grant given its sub £25,000 starting price, which sits comfortably within the scheme's lower price bands. The electric car grant currently offers up to £3,750 off qualifying models, and over 55 cars are already on that list. If the Epiq lands in that band, you could be looking at a meaningful extra saving on top of an already competitive price. Worth checking Skoda's site directly once order books open in July for the final confirmed figure. Worth saying too, grant eligibility isn't just about price, it also depends on where the car and battery are manufactured. So don't assume it's automatic just because the price fits. We'll confirm as soon as Skoda publishes it officially, so check where the car's being built. Question 3, does rapid DC charging damage my battery faster than AC charging? Occasional rapid charging causes negligible extra wear. The bigger factor is heat and how often you do it. Using DC rapid charging as your only method every single day can accelerate battery degradation slightly faster than predominantly AC home charging. For most people doing the school run and weekly shop, this is a non-issue. Only really matters if you're a high mileage driver relying entirely on the rapid public network day in, day out. For context, the UK's largest battery health study tested 8,000 EVs and found average battery health sitting at 95%. Even cars at 8 or 9 years old were averaging 85%. So this isn't something to lose sleep over either way. If you do rely heavily on rapid charging, the one habit that actually helps is avoiding charging right up to 100% regularly and not leaving the car sitting at a very low charge for long periods either. Both ends of the range generate more heat stress than the comfortable middle. And if you charge from 80 to 100%, it's going to take a lot longer even on a DC rapid charger. So you're best off charging to 80%, as many people say. Question 4, what happens to my charging app or account if my network gets bought out, like with BEV or MER? Typically, your existing app and RFID card continue working through a transition period while the new owner migrates systems through pricing and tariffs. The pricing and tariffs can change once the acquisition completes and the new owner sets its own rates. Keep an eye on emails from the operator during any buyout. That's usually where pricing changes get announced first, often with more notice than you'd expect. It's also worth downloading a couple of alternative charging apps as backup regardless, just so you're never caught out mid-journey if one network's app or payment system has a wobble during a transition. One practical tip, screenshot your current tariff before any migration completes, just so you've got a record of if anything looks off once the new owner takes the billing on. Question 5, if the 80% EV target 2030 gets cut to 50%, does that mean fewer charging points will get built? Not necessarily fewer, but potentially slower. Charging companies plan infrastructure investment around based on expected demand. So a softer mandate could mean some planned rollout gets delayed or scaled back rather than cancelled outright. This is exactly the tension Charge UK flagged this week. Investment decisions get made years in advance, and uncertainty now could mean fewer chargers showing up exactly where they're needed most by 2030. The £15.5 billion figure that was covered earlier in the show was explicitly tied to the mandate staying on track. So that's the number worth watching as this consultation plays out over the coming months. If you're in an area that's currently underserved for public charging, this is genuinely the kind of policy detail worth paying attention to, because it directly affects whether your area gets prioritized or pushed back for charging. Question 6, why does Skoda get to charge the same as petrol when other EVs still cost more? It comes down to platform economics. The Epiq is built on Volkswagen Group's new MEB Plus platform at a high volume. Spanish plant already optimized for combustion electric models side by side, which keeps manufacturing costs down in a way smaller volume EV platforms cannot match yet. Scale is doing most of the work here. VW Group can spread the cost of battery development, the platform and the factory tooling across multiple brands and multiple models. Skoda, Cupra, VW itself. A manufacturer building EVs on a smaller dedicated platform without that shared volume simply can't hit the same cost base yet. Expect more price parity models to follow from manufacturers with similar scale and expect it to take longer from brands without it. Question 7, is now a bad time to buy an EV if the government might change the rules? No. The rules under review affect manufacturers' sales targets, not anything that changes how your car works, what you're allowed to drive, or what charging infrastructure exists today. If anything, the uncertainty works in your favor short term because manufacturers are still discounting heavily to hit this year's targets, regardless of what happens in the consultation. The only genuine risk is in the slower term infrastructure rollout we discussed, which matters more if you're relying entirely on public charging without home charging as a backup. If you've got a driveway and predictable journeys, none of this changes your calculation at all. Question 8, which is, why is BEV buying networks instead of just building more chargers themselves? Buying an existing network is faster and often cheaper than building from scratch. You inherit live sites, existing planning permissions, and paying customers immediately, rather than spending years finding sites and going through council approval processes one by one. Building new public charging infrastructure in the UK is genuinely slow going. Council planning permission, grid connection applications, groundworks, a brand new rapid hub can take well over a year from first application to switch on. Buying MER's existing footprint means BEV gets hundreds of working sites on day one instead of waiting years to build the equivalent from nothing. Expect more of this. It's quicker to buy market share than to build it organically right now. And that's exactly why we're seeing this wave of consolidation across the sector rather than everyone racing to build new sites independently. Question 9, does the Skoda Epiq's bi-directional charging actually save me money, or is it just a nice feature? It can genuinely save money, but only if you pair it with the right home setup and an electricity tariff that rewards exporting power. Without both of those, bi-directional charging is a feature sitting unused. The idea is you charge your car overnight on cheap rates, then the car can feed power back into your house during expensive peak hours, effectively acting as a home battery on wheels. The catch is you need a compatible bi-directional home charger, which still costs more than a standard one, and a tariff structure to actually pay or save you money for doing it. Right now, that's still a fairly small slice of the UK market, but it's growing, and having the car ready for it now means you're not locked out when the tariffs do catch up. Okay, that's the show. It was a big week. We got through a lot. A mandate under review, a genuinely affordable EV that costs the same as a petrol twin. The start of a new series we'll be running every Friday for the next month. If you want the cheapest home charging rates for every month, plus the best lease deals, sign up to the Primetime EV Club, completely free. Links are in the description. If you're trying to figure out which council you're in for charging purposes, we've got a free tool for that too. Link is there as well. So you can put your postcode in, and it'll tell you whether your council will allow you to put a cable gully into your street, or whether they've got funding for it or not. Some councils are blocking it at the moment. And if you're next week on EV Charging Bootcamp, I'm going to be in France, but I'm planning to try and get the show done there. So I'm going to do something around French charging, because I'll be broadcasting from Cannes. The connectors, Type 2, CCS, CCS2, and the one that's basically already extinct. I'm planning to go deeper on the connectors next week for the EV Charging Bootcamp. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening if you're catching this on the podcast. I'm Danny. This has been Primetime EV. See you next week. Have a great weekend. Don't get too hot. Thank you. Bye-bye.